The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like a cathedral built for gods. Representatives from 43 species sat in their designated seats, each one arranged in a perfect circle around the central platform. Today, that platform held only one figure: Ambassador Quan Ji-hun of Earth. Standing alone in his dark blue uniform, Elder Vex Thor rose from his elevated seat, his 6 eyes blazing with cold fury. The Kalmani Elder had lived for 3 centuries, and his scaled skin bore the silver patterns of extreme age. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. The human known as Dr. Sarah Chen created a temporal distortion that affected 3 entire star systems, Vex Thor announced. For 6 hours, the colonies of Praxis 7, Midian, and New Kosa experienced a causality loop. The same 6 hours repeated 17 times. Billions of beings lived through the same moments again and again, aware of each repetition, but unable to change anything. Ji-hun kept his face calm, though his hands trembled slightly at his sides. He had reviewed the incident reports 100 times. Sarah Chen, his old friend from university, had been conducting experiments on temporal mechanics at the research station near Praxis 7. Something had gone wrong. The equations had worked perfectly in simulations, but reality proved more complicated than mathematics. Ambassador Quan, said Counselor Thessa of the Vorin Collective, her melodic voice carrying a note of sadness. We understand this was an accident. Dr. Chen's team had no intention of causing harm. But the risk is too great. What happens when the next accident affects 30 systems? 300? What if a temporal loop cannot be broken? Do the fiver loop. Ji-hun stepped forward to the speaker's circle, a ring of light that projected his voice to every corner of the vast chamber. Counselor Thessa, members of the council, I stand before you not to deny what happened, but to remind you of the principles this council was founded upon. We gather here because we believe different species, working together, can achieve more than any could. Alone. Yes, humanity made a mistake. We will accept punishment. We will accept restrictions on temporal research. But exile? You would cast out an entire species for one accident. One accident? Vex Thor's laugh was bitter and sharp. Your species has been a member of this council for only 73 years. And in that time, you have caused 14 major incidents. You broke the ban on artificial intelligence research. You colonized 3 protected worlds before understanding they were sacred sites. You attempted to weaponize dark matter despite explicit warnings. And now this. Representative Kolvas of the Tethan Empire stood, his crystalline body chiming softly as he moved. The human ambassador speaks of working together, but his people refuse to accept limits. Every species in this council has abandoned dangerous research paths for the greater good. Every species, except humanity. You push against every boundary, test every restriction, question every rule. Because rules should be questioned, Ji-hun said, his voice rising with passion. Because boundaries exist to be expanded. Because restrictions without reason are just chains. We joined this council believing in cooperation and growth. Instead, we find a civilization that stopped moving forward centuries ago. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages, the translation system struggling to keep up. Ji-hun saw disgust on some faces, fear on others, and on a few, a hint of shame. Vex Thor raised one clawed hand, and silence fell instantly. The human reveals his species' true nature. They see our wisdom as cowardice, our caution as weakness. They will not stop pushing until they destroy something that cannot be repaired. I call for a vote. Humanity must be exiled from council space. They will have 10 standard years to evacuate all colonies within our borders. All trade agreements will be terminated. All scientific exchanges will cease. Humanity will be alone, as they seem to wish. I second the motion, Kolvas said immediately. Ji-hun looked around the chamber, searching for allies. He saw Representative Mora of the Hessian, a species that had traded with Earth for decades. She looked at him with sad eyes, but said nothing. He saw Counselor Thalen of the Oryx Unity, whose world Earth had helped during a plague outbreak. Thalen's face was unreadable. "The vote is called," Vexthor declared. Lights began to glow around the chamber, each one representing a vote. Ji-hun watched as they appeared, one by one. Red for exile. Blue for mercy. Red, red, red. A few blue lights scattered among the crowd. Red, red, red. The final count appeared in the air above the central platform. 37 votes. For exile. 6. Against. Ji-hun felt something break inside his chest. He had prepared arguments, compromises, alternatives. None of it mattered now. He straightened his shoulders and looked directly at Vexthor. "You make a mistake today," he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "You teach us that the price of curiosity is abandonment, that the reward for reaching forward is exile. My people will remember this. We will leave your space as demanded. But know this, Elder Vexthor, members of the Council, humanity does not stop. We do not surrender. We do not accept limits just because ancient species fear what they do not understand. You exile us from your territory. We will find our own path." He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. No one spoke. No one tried to stop him. 10 years later, Commander Min Seo Kwan stood on the observation deck of the transport ship Last Departure, watching the final human vessels leave Council space. She was Ji-hun's daughter, and she had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. Behind the fleet, human colonies sat dark and silent. Homes abandoned. Research stations powered down. Monuments to humanity's brief time among the stars, now left as empty shells. Min Seo touched the glass of the viewport, looking back at the retreating lights of New Sol Colony. She had been born there. Her first steps, first words, first kiss, all happened on that world. Now it belonged to the past. "Commander," her communications officer called out. "We're receiving the final all clear from the rear guard. Every human is accounted for. We can make the jump. Send one last message to Council space," Min Seo said. "What should it say, Commander?" Min Seo smiled, thinking of her father's final words to the Council. "Tell them, we will remember this exile. Time will tell who was right." The fleet jumped to faster than light travel, leaving Council space behind. On 43 Council worlds, representatives received the human message. Most dismissed it as empty defiance. Elder Vexthor read the message and felt a cold sensation in his chest. It felt like a warning. It felt like a promise. The humans were gone. The Council celebrated. They believed the danger had passed. They were wrong. 3 years after the exile, Scout Captain Relmick guided his survey ship through the outer regions of what had been human space. The Kalmani officer had volunteered for this assignment despite the protests of his family. Someone needed to catalog the abandoned human colonies, and Relmick had always been curious about the strange species that had been cast out. "Approaching New Sol Colony," his navigator announced. "Sensors show power signatures. Life support active, but no life signs." Relmick leaned forward in his command chair. "No life signs at all? Not even maintenance drones?" "Nothing, Captain. The city is running, but nobody is home." They landed in the central plaza of New Sol, a broad space surrounded by towers that reached toward the purple sky. Relmick led a team of 6 through streets that should have been bustling with activity. Instead, they found silence. Shops stood open, merchandise still on shelves. Restaurants had tables set with dishes half-eaten, food long rotted away. Homes had personal items scattered about, as if people had simply stood up in the middle of their lives and walked away. But there were no bodies. No signs of violence or plague. No indication of what happened. "Captain," one of his team called from a building entrance, You need to see this. Inside what appeared to be a government office, they found a message written on the wall in 7 different human languages. Relmic's translator worked slowly through the text. We are building something you cannot see. What does that mean? His security officer asked. Relmic had no answer. Over the following decades, the council expanded into former human territory. Every colony told the same story. Empty cities, with power still running. Personal belongings left behind. And always, somewhere in each settlement, a message. We are building something you cannot see. The council's greatest scientists studied the abandoned worlds, searching for clues. Some believed the humans had all died from a plague they were too ashamed to report. Others thought they had developed some kind of mass teleportation technology and escaped to another part of the galaxy. A few suggested something stranger. But they were dismissed as paranoid. Centuries passed. 800 years after the exile, humanity became a ghost story. Children in council schools learned about the dangerous species that had experimented too recklessly and paid the ultimate price. The empty human colonies became tourist attractions, places where young people went to feel the thrill of mystery. Captain Thelrix had grown up hearing those stories. His grandmother had been Relmic, the first scout to explore the abandoned colonies. She had died believing the truth about humanity's disappearance would never be known. Thelrix inherited her curiosity, along with her name. Now he commanded his own scout ship, the Seeker of Truth. And he had spent 5 years investigating the furthest edges of former human space. He ignored the jokes from other officers who called him obsessed. He did not care that the council considered the matter closed. Captain, we are approaching the coordinates from the old star charts, his pilot said. This was listed as a human research outpost. Name, Kronos Station. The station hung in the darkness of space like a metal flower, its modules spreading out from a central core. Unlike other human structures, this one showed no power signatures. It appeared truly dead. Thelrix suited up and crossed to the station with 2 crew members. They forced open an airlock and entered corridors lit only by their helmet lamps. Frost covered every surface. The station had been cold and dark for centuries. They found laboratories filled with equipment Thelrix did not recognize, computer systems that refused to activate, storage rooms packed with crystalline objects that hurt to look at, as if they existed at slightly wrong angles to reality. In the central chamber, Thelrix discovered a pedestal holding a single crystal the size of his fist. Unlike the others, this one glowed with a soft blue light. As he approached, images appeared within its depths. He saw the chamber he stood in, but occupied by human researchers working at their stations. Then the image shifted, showing the same chamber, but with different humans, wearing different uniforms. It shifted again, and again, each time showing the same space but with different people, different equipment, different details. Captain, what is that? His engineer asked, her voice tight with fear. I think, Thelrix said slowly, reaching out to touch the crystal. It is showing us different versions of the same moment. Different timelines, all existing at once. The moment his gloved hand touched the crystal, light exploded through the chamber. Thelrix saw himself reaching for the crystal from a dozen different angles simultaneously. He felt dizzy, as if he was experiencing multiple moments overlapping each other. Then the light faded, and he stood alone in the dark chamber, the crystal now dark and cold in his hand. Captain, his engineer shouted, where did you go? You vanished for 3 minutes. I did not go anywhere, Thelrix said, confused. I have been right here. No, sir. You touched that object and disappeared. We saw you blink out of existence. Thelrix looked at the crystal in his hand. What had the humans discovered here? What had they learned to do? He brought the crystal back to his ship and locked it in the science lab. That night, he could not sleep. He kept thinking about those images, those multiple versions of the same moment. 2 days later, his ship received an emergency broadcast from Council Space. Attacks had begun across the territory. Entire fleets were disappearing and reappearing destroyed. The strange part was the timing. Sensor logs showed the attacks finishing before they started. Ships received distress calls about their own destruction hours before the enemy appeared. "This makes no sense," Thelrix's science officer said, reviewing the reports. "Effects cannot happen before causes. It violates every law of physics we understand." Thelrix stared at the crystal in its containment field. "Unless," he said quietly, "someone learned how to violate those laws." The attacks intensified over the following weeks. Worlds reported being struck by weapons that had not yet been fired. Colonies vanished from history entirely. People remembered civilizations that sensor records showed had never existed. Reality itself was becoming unstable. The Council convened an emergency session. Scientists from every species worked desperately to understand the enemy. They called them the chronovores, beings that somehow existed outside normal time. Ancient texts mentioned them as a myth, things that fed on temporal energy and could attack across all moments simultaneously. In his quarters, Thelrix studied the crystal every night. He became convinced it held answers. The humans had been experimenting with time. They had discovered something, and then they had vanished, leaving behind only cryptic messages. "We are building something you cannot see." Thelrix finally understood. The humans had not died. They had not run away. They had gone somewhere else. Somewhere outside the normal flow of time. They had built something in a place the Council could not perceive. He requested an audience with the Council's leadership. Elder Vexus Thor, now ancient beyond measure, listened to Thelrix's theory. With tired eyes, "You believe the humans are still alive? After 800 years?" The old Kalmani's voice was weak, but still sharp. "You think they can help us against these chronovores?" "I believe they are the only ones who can help," Thelrix said. "They were the only species studying temporal mechanics. If anyone knows how to fight an enemy that exists outside time, it would be humanity." Vex Thor was silent for a long moment. Then, he nodded slowly. "I exiled them. I led the vote that cast them out. If they still live, they have no reason to help us. But you may try, young Thelrix. Use that crystal. Send your message into whatever void the humans entered. Beg them for mercy we did not show them." Thelrix returned to his ship and activated the crystal. He spoke into its glowing depths, not knowing if anyone could hear. "Humanity, if you still exist, we need you. The exile was wrong. Please respond." The crystal blazed with light. Text appeared in the air around it, written in 17 different human languages across 5 different alphabets. The words overlapped and intersected, but the translation system worked through them slowly. All of them said the same thing. "We have been waiting. Come to these coordinates." A string of numbers followed, pointing to a region of space that, according to every council map, was completely empty. Thelrix set course immediately, his heart pounding with fear and hope. After 800 years of silence, humanity had answered. Now he would learn what they had become. The chronovore attack on the Hessian homeworld happened in reverse. First, the cities burned. Then the defense fleet arrived to protect them. Then the enemy appeared. Finally, the warning sirens began. Counselor Mora watched from an evacuation ship as her world died out of sequence. She saw buildings collapse into rubble. Then the explosions that would destroy them. Then the weapons fire that would cause the explosions. Her mind struggled to process events happening backward. "How do we fight something like this?" her aide whispered, tears streaming down his face. Mora had no answer. In the 3 months since the chronovores had awakened, the Council had lost 18 worlds and countless ships. Every attempt to fight back failed because the enemy attacked from all directions in time simultaneously. They killed defenders before battles began. They destroyed supply lines in the past to starve armies in the present. Council scientists tried everything. They attempted to predict attack patterns, But the chronovores had no pattern. They tried to shield worlds with temporal stabilizers, but the devices themselves became targets and were destroyed decades before they were built. They sent fleets to attack the enemy's origin point, only to find their ships had already been defeated there centuries ago. The most disturbing part was the unwriting. 3 entire civilizations had been erased from existence. The Korath people, the Velian Confederacy, the Praxis worlds. Everyone in Council space remembered them, had histories with them, had made treaties and friendships. But every sensor, every database, every physical record showed they had never existed at all. It was as if reality was being edited, and only living memory preserved what had been lost. "They are coming," an old Vorin scientist explained to the emergency council session. "Not from space, from before. The chronovores existed millions of years ago, before most of our species evolved. They fed on temporal energy until they consumed everything available, then went into hibernation. Our experiments with time technology in the past century woke them up. Now, they are eating their way through our timeline. How do we kill something that exists before we are born?" Representative Kolvas demanded, his crystalline body flickering with agitation. "We cannot," the scientist said simply. "We exist in linear time. They do not. Every weapon we fire at them, they have already dodged. Every strategy we develop, they have already countered. We are trying to fight a 4-dimensional enemy with 3-dimensional tactics." Elder Vexthor sat in his seat, looking smaller and frailer than anyone had ever seen him. At 437 years old, he was the last living member of the council that had exiled humanity. The weight of that decision pressed on him like a physical force. "There is one possibility," Vexthor said, his voice barely audible. 8 centuries ago, the humans were experimenting with temporal mechanics. We exiled them for it. We thought they would destroy themselves with their dangerous research. Instead, they vanished completely, leaving messages we did not understand. What if they did not die? What if they succeeded where we were too afraid to try? The chamber erupted in argument. Some representatives called the idea desperate fantasy. Others pointed out that even if humanity still existed, they would have no reason to help the council that had cast them out. "Send young Thelrix," Vexthor said, cutting through the noise. "He has studied the humans for years. He has their artifacts. Let him search for them. If they are gone, we have lost nothing. If they exist and refuse to help, we are no worse off than we are now. But if they exist and can be convinced to aid us, we might survive." The vote was unanimous. Desperation made allies of former skeptics. Thelrix's journey to the coordinates took 17 days. His ship traveled through empty space, finding nothing unusual until the final day. Then, his sensors began reporting impossible readings. "Captain, the space ahead shows contradictory data," his science officer reported, confusion evident in her voice. "Scans say there is a massive structure there. Other scans say there is nothing. Both readings are accurate simultaneously." "That is impossible," Thelrix said. "Yes, sir. But that is what the sensors show." As they approached, Thelrix began to see it. A shimmer in space, like heat waves rising from hot ground. But as he focused on it, the shimmer became more solid. Structures appeared, flickering in and out of visibility. They were not appearing and disappearing. They were existing and not existing at the same time. "We are receiving a transmission," his communications officer announced. "It is in human language. Multiple human languages, all speaking at once." "Play it," Thelrix ordered. A woman's voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect Kalmani with only a slight accent. "Vessel seeker of truth, you are entering the manifold. Your ship exists in linear time. We exist in temporal space. This creates navigation difficulties. We are sending a guide. A small craft materialized next to Thelrix's ship. It looked like it had always been there, and had just arrived at the same moment. Two more copies of it appeared, occupying the same space but somehow not colliding. Thelrix's eyes hurt looking at it. "Follow the guide," the voice instructed. "Try not to think too hard about what you see. Your brain is not designed for this. Follow the guide. Follow the guide for this." The guide led them forward into the shimmer. Thelrix felt a sensation like falling sideways through a surface that was not quite there. Then, everything changed. They were in a place that should not exist. Space stretched out in directions that made no geometrical sense. Thelrix saw a planet that was simultaneously whole, shattered, and being rebuilt. He saw ships moving backward and forward through time at once. He saw structures that existed in multiple versions, all overlapping. "Welcome to the manifold," the voice said. "We are humanity. All of us. Across every moment we have existed, and will exist. Welcome to what we built, when you exiled us from your space." A vessel approached, vastly larger than Thelrix's scout ship. It had the sleek lines of human design but with modifications that hurt to perceive. Parts of it seemed to be in different time periods simultaneously. "Requesting permission to board," the voice said, though it was more statement than question. "Granted," Thelrix managed to say, his voice shaking. 3 figures materialized on his bridge. No, not materialized. They had walked through doors that opened in empty air, doors that led from their ship to his, despite the distance between them. Thelrix's crew backed away in fear. The leader was a human woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see in more than 3 dimensions. She wore a uniform of shifting colors, like oil on water. The symbols on it flickered between different versions. "I am Director Maya Chen Quan," she said. "Descendant of the woman whose research your council feared, and of the man who warned you that exile was a mistake. Captain Thelrix, thank you for finding us. We have been waiting a very long time. From your perspective, from ours, we have been waiting no time at all. Time is strange like that. Your message said we need help," Maya continued. "The chronovores have awakened. They are unwriting your civilization. You cannot fight them because you exist in linear time, and they do not. Is this correct?" "Yes," Thelrix said. "How do you know all this?" Maya smiled. "Because, from our perspective, this conversation has already happened, is happening now, and has not yet begun. We have seen possible futures where you come here. We have seen possible futures where you do not. We have seen futures where we help you, and futures where we refuse. All of those futures are real until we choose which one to make actual." She gestured, and images appeared in the air of the bridge. Thelrix saw council worlds burning. He saw the chronovores, terrible shapes that existed at angles wrong to reality. He saw timelines collapsing. 800 years ago, your people exiled mine," Maya said, her voice harder now. "You feared what we were learning about time. You cast us out, rather than try to understand. We could have died. We could have surrendered and lived small lives on forgotten worlds. Instead, we did what humans do. We pushed forward. We learned. We became more." She waved her hand, and the images changed. Thelrix saw humanity's transformation. Generations of researchers working in isolation, building on Sarah Chen's initial breakthrough. The first successful temporal gateway. The discovery of how to exist in multiple timelines simultaneously. The construction of the manifold. A space that existed across all moments at once. "We became 4-dimensional beings while remaining in 3-dimensional bodies," Maya explained. "We learned to remember futures and preserve pasts. We connected our consciousness across timelines. We built an empire not across space, but across time itself. Every moment humanity has ever existed, we exist there still. Every possible future where we might exist, we are already there. The manifold is all of it. all at once. Then you can fight the chronovores, Thelrix said. Yes, we are the only ones who can. But understand, Captain, we cannot go back to being what we were. We cannot fit back into your linear timeline. We exist partially outside causality now. If we help you, humanity can never rejoin the Council. We will always be separate, always strange to you. The Council is dying, Thelrix said. Entire species are being erased. Whatever terms you ask, whatever conditions you demand, we will accept. Please, help us. Maya looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes seemed to see through him, around him, beyond him. I will need to consult with all of myself, she said. Present Maya, past Maya, future Maya. All the versions of me that exist across the manifold. We will decide together whether to help the civilization that exiled our ancestors. She and her companions stepped back through their impossible doors and vanished. Thelrix waited, though he was not sure what he was waiting for. Time felt strange here, elastic and uncertain. Then Maya returned. Or perhaps she had never left. She smiled. We have decided. Humanity will help. Not because you deserve it. Not because we have forgiven the exile. But because protecting the timeline is now what we are. It is our purpose. The chronovores threaten all of existence, not just the Council. We will fight them. She extended her hand in the old human gesture of agreement. Welcome to the temporal dominion, Captain. Let us show you what 800 years of exile taught us to become. Maya led Thelrix and his crew through corridors that existed in multiple states simultaneously. They walked through the docking tube connecting the ships, but Thelrix could see other versions of the same tube branching off in directions that should not exist. Through some doors, he glimpsed different designs, different eras of construction, all coexisting. Try to focus only on the path directly ahead of you, Maya advised. Your visual cortex is not built to process overlapping timelines. You will adjust, somewhat, but it takes time. Linear time, she added with a slight smile. They emerged into a vast chamber that made Thelrix's head spin. It was a command center, clearly, with stations and displays and crew working at various tasks, but there were multiple versions of it layered on top of each other. He saw the same chamber, new and gleaming, then worn and repaired, then rebuilt with different technology. He saw human crew members who appeared solid in one spot and ghostly in another, as if they existed more strongly in certain moments. This is the Temporal Guard's flagship, the Eternal Moment, Maya explained. It exists across 17 different timeline variations, simultaneously. The crew you see are all versions of themselves from different timelines, working together. That woman there, she pointed to a human officer checking a display, is Captain Park Minji in this timeline. Over there, slightly transparent to your eyes, is Captain Park Minji. From a timeline where the chronovores woke up 3 years earlier. And there is a version of her from a timeline where they never woke at all. How do they not get confused? Thelrix asked, feeling confused himself. They do, at first. It takes training to maintain individual identity across multiple timeline versions. We call it temporal consciousness. Every human in the manifold has it to some degree. We learn it from childhood, just as you learn to walk or speak. She led them to a viewing port, and Thelrix gasped. Outside was not space as he knew it. They looked out on a landscape of time itself. He saw Earth, humanity's homeworld, but in hundreds of variations. He saw the blue and green world before humans evolved. He saw it covered in cities of different designs, representing different futures. He saw versions being torn apart by war, versions transformed into paradises, versions where humanity never existed, and versions where they had ascended to something beyond recognition. All of these Earths existed in the same location, but in different temporal phases. This is the manifold, Maya said. The totality of human experience across all timelines, not alternate universes. These are all the same universe, just different points along the timeline, and different branches of possibility. When your council exiled us, we had to go somewhere. We chose to go into time itself. She gestured, and the view changed. Thelrix saw vast structures stretching between the different Earths, connecting them. Cities built in temporal space, existing across multiple moments simultaneously. Ships moving not through space but through time, traveling from one timeline variation to another. How many humans are there? Thelrix asked. That is a complicated question, Maya replied. Are you asking how many individual humans exist? Billions. Across all our colonies and worlds. But are you asking how many consciousness streams exist in the manifold? Fewer. Because many of the humans you see are the same individual existing in multiple timelines. I am one person, but I exist in 47 different timelines simultaneously. All 47 versions of me are connected. We share memories, thoughts, experiences. When one version of me learns something, all versions know it. She saw his confusion and tried to simplify. Imagine you could remember tomorrow as clearly as yesterday. Imagine you could see all the different choices you might make and experience all their outcomes at once. That is what temporal consciousness feels like. We do not move through time. We exist throughout it. A younger human officer approached, saluting Maya with a gesture that looked strange to Thelrix. The officer flickered, sometimes appearing as a woman, sometimes as a man, as if uncertain which version was most present. Director, we have confirmed the Chronovore breach points, 43 locations across Council space where they are actively unwriting reality. The erasure front is expanding at a rate that makes normal mathematics meaningless. Thank you, Lieutenant Park, Maya said. Thelrix noticed the name. Park. Like Captain Park Minji. Possibly related. Possibly the same person from a different timeline. His head hurt trying to understand. Can you really stop them? Thelrix asked. These chronovores exist outside of normal time. How can even you fight that? Maya's expression grew serious. The chronovores are predators from before most current civilizations existed. They feed on temporal energy, on the flow of cause and effect itself. When they consume a timeline, they do not just destroy it, they erase it from ever having existed. Only living memory preserves what was lost. She brought up a display showing one of the creatures. Thelrix recoiled. It was not a shape so much as an absence of shape, a wound in reality itself. It had aspects that suggested mouths, eyes, limbs, but all of them were wrong, existing at angles that violated geometry. They are dangerous, Maya continued, but they have a weakness. They exist outside causality, yes, but they must enter causality to feed. The moment they interact with a timeline to consume it, they become vulnerable. For that instant, they are subject to cause and effect. That is when they can be hurt. But how do you know when that instant occurs? How do you arrive at the right moment to fight them? Maya smiled. We are already there. We have always been there. We will arrive there for the first time. Past, present, future. In the manifold, they are all accessible. When a chronovore attacks a council world next week, we can deploy forces there from next month, from yesterday, from 10 years ago. We can surround them in time the way your fleets surround an enemy in space. She brought up a tactical display. But it was unlike any Thelrix had seen. It showed not just three-dimensional space, but 4 dimensions, with timeline branches spreading like a tree. On the display, chronovore positions appeared as dark voids consuming the branches. Our strategy is simple, Maya explained. We identify the moment when a chronovore enters a timeline. We deploy forces to that exact moment from multiple timeline branches. We attack from past, present, and future simultaneously, creating a temporal trap. The chronovore cannot escape to a different time because we are already there, waiting. You are saying, Thelrix said slowly, working through the concept, that you will defeat them by fighting battles that have already happened, are happening now, and have not started yet. All at the same time? Exactly. Now you are beginning to understand how the temporal dominion makes war. A tone sounded through the ship, and Maya's expression changed. It is beginning. The first major chronovore assault. They are targeting the Vorin homeworld. Counselor Thessa's people. The attack started 3 hours ago from their perspective, but from ours, we have been fighting it for 2 days, and will begin fighting it in 6 minutes. She turned to Thelrix. Would you like to observe? I warn you, it will be disorienting. You will see a battle from multiple time perspectives at once. Yes, Thelrix said immediately. I must witness this. The council must know what you can do. Maya led him to an observation gallery. Other human officers joined them, preparing displays and controls. Through the viewport, Thelrix saw the Vorin homeworld in the distance, beautiful, covered in the floating crystal cities the Vorin were famous for. Then he saw it from another angle, the same world, burning, the cities falling. That was the present from the Vorin perspective, the attack happening now. And from another angle, he saw the world intact but with human ships appearing around it. That was the past. Human forces arriving before the attack began. And from still another angle, the world restored, the attack defeated. That was the future. The outcome of a battle, not yet fought. Deploy temporal guard fleets, Maya ordered. Timeline convergence at my mark. All versions coordinate for simultaneous strike. Around the Vorin homeworld, human ships appeared from nowhere. No, Thelrix realized. They were appearing from Nauhen. They did not travel through space to get here. They simply existed here across multiple timelines. The chronovore appeared, a massive wound in reality descending on the planet to consume it. Thelrix saw it reaching through time itself, erasing the world from multiple moments at once. But human weapons fired, not normal weapons. These were beams of concentrated causality, weapons that enforced cause and effect on targets that tried to exist outside it. The chronovore screamed, a sound that Thelrix felt in his bones rather than heard. It is fighting back, Maya said calmly. It is trying to escape to a different timeline. Pursue. The human ships moved in ways that should not be possible. They followed the chronovore through time, appearing in its past to cut off retreat, attacking from its future to prevent escape. They surrounded it not just in space, but in causality itself. Temporal cage established. An officer reported. Target is locked in the current timeline branch. It cannot flee to other timelines. All units, concentrated fire, Maya ordered. The combined human fleet fired as one. Beams of enforced causality struck the chronovore from every direction in time. The creature writhed, trying to unmake the attacks before they happened, but the humans were already there in its past, had already fired. With a sound like reality healing, the chronovore collapsed. It did not die so much as cease to have existed outside of time. It fell back into causality and immediately aged to death across millions of years in an instant. The Vorin homeworld remained. The attack that had been happening was erased from the timeline. From the Vorin perspective, the attack had simply never occurred. But Thelrix remembered it. The humans remembered it. It had happened, but it had also been prevented. One down, Maya said. 42 more breach points to secure. Then we hunt for their nest, wherever and whenever it is. Thelrix stared at her, understanding finally sinking in. Humanity had not just survived their exile. They had become something the Council could not have imagined. They had become guardians of time itself. The Council was wrong to exile you, he said quietly. Yes, Maya agreed. But if they had not exiled us, we would never have been forced to evolve. We would have remained limited to 3 dimensions, to linear time. The exile hurt us, nearly destroyed us, but it also freed us to become what we are now. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you becomes the making of you. She looked out at the manifold, at all the overlapping timelines of human existence. You exiled us from space, she said. We conquered time. The war against the chronovores lasted 3 months from the Council's perspective. For the temporal guard, it lasted 3 days, and 3 years, and 3 centuries all at once. Time lost its meaning when battles could be fought across multiple eras simultaneously. Thelrix remained with Maya's forces throughout the campaign, documenting everything for the Council. His reports became increasingly difficult to write. How could he explain a battle where the victory happened before the deployment? How could he describe watching human forces suffer casualties that were then prevented in the past, so the dead soldiers were simultaneously killed and never harmed? "You are thinking too linearly," Maya told him after he expressed frustration. "Stop trying to arrange events in a sequence. In the manifold, we do not think in terms of before and after. We think in terms of connection and causality. This event connects to that event. This choice causes that outcome. The sequence does not matter, only the relationship." End quote. This sequence, that matter. She was teaching him temporal consciousness, or trying to. Thelrix's brain was not built for it, but he was beginning to grasp fragments of the concept. Sometimes, for brief moments, he could see slightly beyond the present. Not the future exactly, but the edges of possible futures bleeding into his perception. The temporal guard deployed across all 43 breach points simultaneously. Thelrix watched from the eternal moment as Maya coordinated battles that spanned centuries. In one display, he saw human forces defending a colony that had been attacked 2 weeks ago. In another display, those same forces were preparing defenses 3 years before the colony was even built. Both timelines were equally real. Both were happening now. "The chronovores are not random," Maya explained as she studied the tactical displays. "They are feeding on timelines in a pattern. They started at the edges of council space and are working inward. They are consuming civilizations from past to present, erasing histories one era at a time." "Why that pattern?" Thelrix asked. "Because they are converging on something. A nexus point in space-time where temporal energy is concentrated. If they reach it and consume it, the entire region's timeline will collapse. Billions of years of history will simply cease to exist. Where is this nexus?" Maya's expression was grim. "The Galactic Council, homeworld. The place where 43 species first came together to form your civilization. That moment, that choice to cooperate across species, created a focal point in causality. It is what the chronovores have been hunting for." She pulled up a projection showing the Council homeworld surrounded by converging chronovore swarms. "They will reach it in 4 days from now. 2 days ago, from their perspective. 6 months in the future from another angle. The exact timing does not matter. What matters is that all their forces are converging on this single point. It will be their largest attack." "Can you stop them?" Thelrix asked, though he feared the answer. "I do not know," Maya said honestly. "We can fight them one at a time, trap them in causality, and destroy them. But this many, all converging at once, attacking from multiple eras simultaneously? We have never faced anything like this. We will need to commit every asset across every timeline." She turned to her command crew. "Send the order. Full mobilization. Every version of every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have across all timeline branches. We are going to make a stand at the Council homeworld. We will either save it or die trying." "All versions?" Thelrix asked. "Even the ones from timelines where the Council homeworld has already fallen? Especially those," Maya said. "If we win here, those timelines never happen. If we lose, well, those timelines become the only reality. We are literally fighting to determine which version of history gets to be real." The deployment was staggering. Thelrix watched as human ships appeared in the space around the Council homeworld, in numbers that should not be possible. Thousands of vessels, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. All of them flickered slightly, existing partially in different timelines. "How many ships is this?" he asked in awe. "It is the entire temporal guard," Maya replied. Every ship we have ever built, from every timeline where we built them. Some of these vessels come from our early days in the manifold when we were still learning. Others come from timelines, centuries ahead of this moment where we have perfected temporal technology. All of them are here now because we need them. On the Council homeworld below, Thelrix knew the Council leadership was watching in confusion and terror. From their perspective, an impossibly large human fleet had appeared from nowhere, surrounding their world. They did not know whether to be grateful or afraid. Then the chronovores arrived. They came from all directions in time at once. Massive wounds in reality, tearing their way through the fabric of causality. Dozens of them. The largest concentration of chronovores ever seen. In one place. They converged on the Council homeworld like predators sensing a wounded animal. All units, Maya broadcast. Engage at will. Remember your training. Trap them in causality. Then destroy them. Do not let even one reach the planet. The battle began, and Thelrix's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. Human ships fired on chronovores that had not yet arrived, while simultaneously being attacked by chronovores from the past. Ships were destroyed and then saved by reinforcements arriving from different timelines. The chronovores tried to escape to different eras, only to find human forces already waiting for them there. Captain Park, take your squadron and cut off that group's retreat into the past, Maya ordered. Lieutenant Chen, coordinate with your future self. She knows which chronovore is about to break through. Prevent it before it starts. The battle sprawled across time itself. Thelrix saw a chronovore destroyed in the present, only to watch human forces deploy 3 days ago to set up the trap that would lead to that destruction. He saw casualties that were immediately prevented by past versions of the same crews receiving warnings from their future selves. But the chronovores were learning. They began coordinating their attacks across timelines, hitting human forces in multiple eras simultaneously. Ships started taking damage faster than temporal consciousness could coordinate defense. We are losing cohesion, an officer reported, stress clear in their voice. Too many simultaneous engagements across too many timeline branches. Some crews are losing track of which version of themselves is primary. Hold together, Maya ordered. Remember your training. All versions of you are equally real. Trust yourselves. A massive chronovore, larger than any they had faced before, burst through the human lines. It headed straight for the Council homeworld, its impossible mouth opening to consume the planet and all its history. That is the Prime, Maya said, her voice tight. The eldest and strongest. The one that leads all the others. If it reaches the planet, we lose everything. Can we stop it? Thelrix asked. Maya was quiet for a moment, and Thelrix realized she was communicating with other versions of herself across timelines. All of them thinking together as one distributed consciousness. There is a way, she finally said, but it will cost me. All of me. Before Thelrix could ask what she meant, Maya was already moving. She stepped through one of those impossible doors, the kind that led from one point in space-time to another, and appeared standing in space directly in front of the Prime chronovore. Through the viewport, Thelrix watched as Maya Chen Quan faced down the ancient predator. She was unprotected in the void of space, but she did not need protection. She existed across 47 timeline branches simultaneously. She was herself repeated and distributed through time. You consume causality. Maya's voice broadcast through every speaker on every human ship. You exist, outside, cause and effect. But I am causality. I am every choice humanity made. Every consequence we accepted. Every future we built. You cannot consume me, because I am not in the timeline. I am the timeline. The Prime chronovore attacked, trying to erase her from existence. But as it closed its impossible jaws around her present self, Maya's past selves attacked from behind. As it turned to face them, her future selves struck from ahead. She was everywhere in time the creature existed, attacking from all angles of causality at once. I am the daughter of Sarah Chen, who dared to study time when your council feared it. Maya continued, her voice echoing across dimensions. I am the granddaughter of Ji Hun Quan, who warned you that exile was a mistake. I am humanity, transformed by 800 years of isolation into something you cannot comprehend. And I will not let you erase the civilization that made us what we are. She was burning. Thelrix could see it. Every version of Maya across all 47 timelines was channeling temporal energy through her consciousness, turning herself into a weapon. She was collapsing all her possible futures, all her alternative pasts, into a single focused point of causality. You taught me to exist in multiple timelines, Maya said. And Thelrix realized she was speaking to him now. To all of humanity. Now watch as I choose to exist in only one. Watch as I become singular. Watch as I sacrifice all my possible futures to save this single present. The 47 versions of Maya collapsed into one. All that distributed consciousness, all those parallel lives, converging into a single moment. The energy released was like a supernova of pure causality. The prime chronovore screamed. It tried to escape to the past. But Maya was already there, had always been there. Her sacrifice echoing backward through time. It tried to flee to the future. But Maya's final act reached forward, sealing every path. Trapped in the present moment, unable to exist outside of time, the ancient predator fell into causality like a swimmer dragged into deep water. And in falling into causality, it became subject to cause and effect. It became mortal. It became vulnerable. All units, fire on the prime, someone ordered. Thelrix thought it might have been Captain Park, taking command in Maya's absence. Every human weapon fired as one. Concentrated causality beams struck the prime chronovore, enforcing reality on something that had existed beyond reality for eons. The creature aged millions of years in seconds. It rotted and crumbled and died, falling backward through its own timeline until it reached the moment it first came into existence. And then even that moment was erased. The remaining chronovores, seeing their leader destroyed, fled. They scattered across timelines, retreating to whatever dark corners of causality had spawned them. The human fleet pursued, hunting them down one by one. But Maya Chen Quan was gone. Not dead. Exactly. Her body remained, floating in space. But the consciousness that had animated it across 47 timelines was reduced to one. The distributed being that had existed across multiple realities was now just a single person again. And that person was too exhausted to remain conscious. Thelrix watched as human medical ships recovered her body. He listened to the reports. Alive, breathing, but deep, in temporal shock. Her consciousness had collapsed from 47 versions to one. It might take years for her to wake up, if she ever did. The battle ended. The Council homeworld was saved. The chronovores were defeated, scattered to the furthest edges of time where they could do no harm. Humanity had won. 3 days later, Thelrix stood before the Galactic Council in the same chamber where Ji Hun Quan had been exiled 8 centuries earlier. Elder Vexthor was dead, finally succumbing to age mere hours after the battle ended. But before he died, he had recorded a final message. I was wrong. The old Kalmani's voice played through the chamber. 800 years ago, I led the vote to exile humanity because I feared their curiosity. I feared the risks they took. I believed we were protecting the galaxy. Instead, I condemned them to isolation and nearly cost us everything. But humanity took that exile and made it their crucible. They became something greater than we could imagine, something necessary. I die, asking their forgiveness and recommending the Council grant them whatever recognition they request. Thelrix presented his report, showing the Council everything he had witnessed. The manifold, the temporal dominion, the battles across time itself, the sacrifice of Maya Chen Quan. When he finished, the chamber was silent for a long time. What do they want from us? Representative Kolvas finally asked, his crystalline voice subdued. Nothing, Thelric said. Director Chen Quan made it clear. Humanity cannot return to linear time. They exist partially outside causality now. They cannot rejoin the Council because they no longer fit in our reality. But they will protect the galaxy from temporal threats. It is what they are now. Guardians of time itself. Then what do we owe them? Another representative asked. Recognition, Thelric said simply. Acknowledgement that the exile was wrong. An apology for the 8 centuries they spent alone, and a promise to never again exile a species for daring to push the boundaries of knowledge. The vote was unanimous. The Council formally apologized for the exile. They recognized the temporal dominion as a sovereign entity. They granted humanity the status of temporal guardians, protectors of causality for all species. Thelrix delivered the news to the Manifold personally. He met with Captain Park Min-ji, who was serving as acting director, while Maya recovered. The Council apologizes, he told her. They recognize what you have become. They honor your sacrifice. Maya will be pleased when she wakes, Park said. If she wakes, temporal shock is complicated. She might sleep for years. She might wake tomorrow. She might wake in multiple timelines, but never quite fully in any one. Time will tell. An appropriate phrase, Thelric said with a slight smile. He looked out at the Manifold one last time before departing. The overlapping timelines of humanity. All the versions of their civilization existing simultaneously. In some timelines, humans never left Earth. In others, they never evolved. In this one, they became something beyond what any species had achieved before. You exiled us from space, Park said, echoing Maya's earlier words. We conquered time, and now we will spend eternity making sure no one else suffers what the chronovores tried to inflict. It is a good purpose. A worthy purpose. Thank you, Thelric said. From all of us. As his ship departed the Manifold, he looked back one last time. He saw the temporal structures, the overlapping timelines, the flickering existence of humanity across multiple realities, and for just a moment, he thought he saw Maya. Not the sleeping body recovering in medical care, but the distributed consciousness she had been. 47 versions of her standing together, smiling at him across time itself. Then his ship crossed back into normal space, into linear time, and the vision faded. But Thelrix remembered. The galaxy remembered. And humanity, existing across all moments simultaneously, would always remember. The exile had ended not with return, but with transformation. Not with forgiveness, but with transcendence. Time itself could not erase what humanity had become. They were the temporal dominion, guardians of causality, protectors of the timeline, and they would endure forever because they existed in all of forever at once.